welcome everyone to the newest segment of Ask the Expert. My name is Brady Ortego, and with me today I have Leah Burton. Leah and I are both shareholders with the law firm of Roberts, Markell, Weinberg, Butler, Haley. Both of us work out of the San Antonio office and predominantly focus on the Hill Country area, which in our office means we go all the way down to the valley and as far west as Terralingua. We're very excited today to talk to you about disaster recovery. This comes out of our recent winter storm. For any new Texans that are watching, I promise you it's not always like that in February. And we're excited to bring some information to you in terms of how you deal with a disaster, post-disaster, and then a few things to think about in the future. It's my opinion that it's not a matter of if a disaster is going to occur. It is a matter of when. And it doesn't matter where you are in Texas. It could be hailstorms, floods, hurricanes, you name it. There's a possibility for a disaster, so you want to be ready. So with that intro, let's go ahead and open up the queue for the most common questions that we get when a natural disaster occurs.
When determining responsibility for the submission of claims and the completion of repairs to damaged areas after a catastrophic event such as what we experienced in recent weeks with the Texas freeze, you really need to look to the governing documents of the association to begin with. And there are going to be circumstances where the local statutes are going to have some authority, but in the single family scenario, you're going to look to your governing documents and what they say as to the owner's responsibility for maintenance and repair of their lots versus the common areas. With regard to condos, which is where we've seen the bulk of the claims following the freeze, you will need to determine first whether or not your condominium development was created before January 1st, 1994 or after. If before, then Chapter 81 of the Property Code will control. And that Property Code, Chapter 81, provides that a unit includes the interior surfaces of the perimeter walls, floors, and ceilings, and there is no mention of pipes. But with regard to Chapter 82, which governs condominium developments post January 1st, 1994, pipes that serve a unit exclusively will be considered limited common elements. And so in that scenario, if the governing documents don't provide otherwise, then per Chapter 82, the unit owner will be responsible for the cost of maintenance, repair, and replacement of any utility, installation, or equipment, which includes pipes that serves only that owner's unit, even if that equipment is located outside of the boundaries of the unit. So the question really comes down to, are you a single family development or are you a condo development? If you're a condo development, are you pre or post 1994? And then with the knowledge that your governing documents are going to control overall. So look to those governing documents. Well, in the aftermath of an event such as we had with the Texas freeze, there is a lot of confusion, there's a lot of chaos that's involved, and the blame game starts immediately. So the best advice that we can give to a board dealing with the aftermath is to make sure to report all claims immediately. Do not wait. So at this point, we're now a couple of weeks out, all claims should have already been reported. And there should have been videos and photos taken of the damage caused, and then mitigation action should have been embarked upon to limit and to basically not make things worse. So those blowers should have been out, might even still be out. The sopping up of the water, the pulling out of the wet drywall so that mold does not start to grow, because mold starts to grow immediately, especially since we had a heat wave directly following the freeze. So really, you got to get that mitigation action started as soon as possible. And I'm sure that anyone who's listening this was all done right, and all the claims have been reported. Now, you're going to have someone else who's going to be discussing insurance. So I'll just briefly say that with regard to pre and post 1994 condos, section 82.111 of the property code, which is the insurance provision of the code, is going to apply to both pre and post 1994 condos. And so in the scenario where you have stacked units, the association's insurance is going to be primary, and in non-stacked units, it will be the owner's insurance. The unit owners are insured under the HOA's in policy, but they should have their own insurance. Now, when claims are submitted by the association, they need to be submitted and adjusted with the association. And any proceeds that come in are going to be actually made payable to the association as the trustee on behalf of the unit owners. And the trustee, the association, will hold those proceeds in trust for the unit owners. When those proceeds come in, first they will be distributed to repair the common elements and the units to get them back to that white box condition. And then the unit owners, it's important to know, are not going to be entitled to any surplus unless there is a surplus after the complete restoration of the condominium or if the condominium has been terminated. Now, when your unit owners are going to make claims, what you'll need to analyze and determine is what the deductibles are, who's responsible. Again, look to the governing documents. Will those claims be covered? What about betterments? What about personal property? Will they be defended by insurance? And so the best advice that we could give is, in order to mitigate any sort of success of a litigation against the association, is to make sure that to preserve all of the evidence. So any correspondence that you have had with unit owners or other owners, any correspondence with the insurance company, make sure you are keeping all of that data, all that documentation, and also make sure that you are keeping a firm grip on all screenshots of text messages with unit owners or anyone, or really anyone as it pertains to the freeze. And then also make sure that you are keeping track of your videos and pictures that you took of the damage post catastrophe.
The short answer is absolutely. This is a process that should occur in a very calculated and thought out manner. One of the aspects of our firm's representations of property owners associations involves litigation related to disputes with contractors or even in some cases insurance carriers. And what I can say without reservation is we've seen a lot of real world examples where the contractor engagement process was rushed and essentially resulted in some protracted, expensive, frustrating litigation. I certainly appreciate the circumstances that you may be dealing with. Whether you have investor owners or full-time resident owners, they're going to want their property to be repaired so that they can either get back to making money as an investor or just get back to life as usual as a resident owner. So there is going to be pressure to fix the units, fix the building quickly and correctly. However, what we see in these large-scale disaster scenarios, we'll call them disaster chasers, contractors that show up perhaps from other states or other regions. They've offered great deals on getting something fixed. They ask for a little bit of money up front, and lo and behold, once they receive that money, you never hear from them again. We have dealt with that circumstance more than once. Additionally, I cannot stress enough the significance of having a contract. And I want to go further with that statement and say a contract that's reviewed by legal counsel. What you're almost always going to get from a contractor is their preferred version of the contract, which not surprisingly is going to, in most cases, be vendor or contractor friendly. So I've seen instances where there was no contract at all for, in some cases, $1 million repair jobs. I've also seen cases where there's been a dispute with the contractor and the contract is vendor friendly. So if you get into a dispute with your contractor, the first question that any lawyer should be asking you is, let me see the contract. So it's very important to plan up front and make sure that this is done very carefully. Our firm works with a master service agreement, and I'll just give you a little peek behind the curtain of how lawyers operate when it comes to contract review. We try to make the vendor's contract look like ours. And so this master service agreement concept essentially gives an association all the provisions that we want to see in a contract of this type: warranties, indemnity, insurance, scope of work, liquidated damages if the project takes longer than it should. Really a document that, as is famously said in the legal industry, is for the divorce, not the marriage. So you want to be able to be sure that if things go bump, that there's a contract in place to protect you. Because what is even more frustrating for your homeowners is not just a bad experience with a contractor, but no legal remedies to pursue against that frustrating experience. And I can say without reservation, there are going to be bumps. They could be big, they could be small. But inevitably, with large-scale projects in particular, there are going to be bumps along the way. And I want associations to be prepared on a contractual basis to deal with those bumps. So our firm is absolutely a proponent of communication, really in any instance, but in particular when it comes to disaster scenarios. Information is your friend. Board members, you are going to be approached by owners in the hallways, in the parking lot, in the common areas, perhaps at the grocery store, asking for updates. When is the project going to start? When is it going to finish? How much is it going to cost us? And notwithstanding you agreeing to serve on the board, you're absolutely entitled to your private life. And what is very important when it comes to communication is a uniform and consistent message. What inevitably happens with these side conversations with individual directors, and it's not necessarily intended, but one homeowner will hear one thing and another homeowner will hear another. And then next thing you know, the rumor mill has churned and it manifests itself on Facebook or perhaps nextdoor.com. So I can't stress enough the significance and importance of having a uniform and consistent message. Now, what I suggest at the very beginning is a communication of the overview of the process to make the repairs. You may not know everything in the very beginning, how long it's going to take or the extent of the damages, but it is valid communication to tell a group of people what you don't know. That is still communication, and they will value that information even if you're just saying, I don't have an update, but we're waiting, and no information is still communication to them. Another communication tool in large-scale instances could be a town hall meeting. These days, lots of these meetings are happening virtually, but that's a meeting where no vote is going to occur, but it is providing information. And so it does allow homeowners to ask questions. You can ask for questions to be pre-submitted. That way you're ready for valid answers. But if perhaps you're thrown a curveball, it's fair for you to say, we've taken note of your question. We're going to look into it and we will provide an answer to the community. So what we see most often is a lack of a disaster plan, or perhaps a disaster plan that needs a bit of dusting off. And the time to plan for a disaster is not while you are experiencing that disaster. And as I mentioned during my opening, it's not a matter of if, but when. So I think it behooves associations across the state to have a disaster plan in place. I envision this to be a general plan that perhaps has subparts that are specific to the disasters that affect that particular area. If you're on the coast, you're just going to be focused on hurricanes, perhaps flooding. If you're in the hill country, ice now with the freeze, and then certainly hailstorms have been an issue, but there are major wind events here as well. But the point being, to have a plan in place so that when you get the news that a disaster is in the Gulf or is coming down from the north or whatever the case may be, you can implement that disaster plan and advise your homeowners that this is the strategic plan for dealing with it. And that way you'll be ready. If the hailstorm causes a roof leak, you have folks on call to help you deal with those issues and mitigate those issues. Additionally, it doesn't hurt to have some types of vendors on a retainer or on call to be ready to jump in for burst pipes or whatever the case may be. You can always learn and you can always improve. So, for those of you who are still experiencing this Texas freeze disaster, perhaps you can use this experience to either create or fine-tune a disaster plan so that you're ready when that next disaster is headed our way.
And I will just add that for condos should really make sure that their maintenance matrix is in place and has been vetted by the attorney for the association and the insurance company to make sure that it is accurate. The maintenance matrix is such a great document. It will include every single item that there could be where someone is going to bear responsibility for its repair and maintenance, albeit the pipes or the walls, the patios, the balconies, the spigots on the outside, the exterior walls, the roofs. This document will lay out every single item, the painting, and who is responsible, if it's the unit owner or if it's the association. And this document you want to have at the ready in the event of such a disaster like we just experienced, so you can grab that document and you can refer to it and know without wasting any time who's responsible for what, and then that will jumpstart you into action. If you have a maintenance matrix that is perhaps several years old or was perhaps prepared by a previous management company, it would behoove the association to have counsel review that document to make sure that it is up to date, that it is accurate, so that, because a lot of money is really laying on the table on that document, and so you want to make sure that you know what the governing documents are saying as to who is responsible for what, and make sure that the document, that maintenance matrix, reflects what those governing documents say.
So unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for today for this segment of Ask the Expert. I definitely want to extend our gratitude to First Service Residential for giving us the opportunity to provide this information to you, and absolutely want to say thank you to the board members for taking the time, even more time, to educate yourselves to better your community. My token joke here is events like this allow you to overtime. So we do know and appreciate that you're all volunteers, and taking even more time out of your life is not lost on us. If anyone is interested in working with us on any of these issues or others, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to help answer questions on disaster or any other issues. The best way to reach us will be through an email address, and that email address is bortego@rmwbh.com. And you can also find both of our email addresses on our website, rmwbh.com. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.